Hello and welcome to this run-through video of one simple way to approach your IGCSE English Language Paper 2 Question 1. The marks available for this question are from Assessment Objective 1, to read and understand, and AO2, understand and analyse. There are 30 marks available and these are ostensibly split into 12 marks for AO1 and the remaining 18 for AO2. However, you can't analyse what you can't understand, so we don't really need to differentiate too much. The method we're looking at here shows the examiner your understanding through topic sentences, which I also refer to as points in this video, and then gains the maximum available marks by providing your evidence and explaining how the evidence led you to understand the point you previously stated. It's pretty simple, right? Well, it will be when you see some examples. Before we start, I'd like to say again that this is one way to approach the question. Your journey through education so far has probably introduced you to several patterns for writing analytical paragraphs: PEE, PEA, petal, peel, pretzel, and so on. What these all have in common is that they start by making a point, then they add evidence, then they explain or analyse it. It makes a lot of sense to continue this and to structure your answer as a series of discrete paragraphs. Trying for one long, overarching answer, as you may have learned to do with essay writing, is far harder and unnecessarily complicates things. Not to mention, it'll take you far longer to write. That said, if you have a way that works better for you, has gained you the marks you're after previously, and that you trust will gain them again for you in the future, then continue to use that method. Just practice it. This is not the only way. But if you are struggling to get the marks you think you could or should be getting, then try this approach. So let's get to it, and let's start by looking at some answers which are okay, but could have gained a lot more marks very easily. All of the examples in this video were answering the question, how does the writer present her experience with the girl in An Unknown Girl? So let me read this one. Throughout her narration, the writer describes many instances where she noticed the culture of India. She mentions that she was in a kameez, which is a traditional Indian cloth. Then she describes the henning process that the unknown girl was creating. Hennaing, I guess. That's a good attempt, right? It shows understanding, it has some evidence. Remember that a reference to the text can be evidence. You don't have to use quotation marks. And there's even some explanation using background knowledge. For example, saying a kameez is a traditional cloth. Unfortunately, this would end up in a low band. This question is ultimately concerned with the how the writer achieves effects, not with what they write. So how can we reflect that understanding in a way that shows the how better? Well, we can refer back to the question. What if the first line of this paragraph was, the writer presents her experience with the unknown girl as being one of noticing the culture of India? We could follow that with the same examples, the same background knowledge, and we would access far more marks. How about this one? Throughout the text, Moniza Alvi interacts with the unknown girl. It starts off, in the evening bazaar studded with neon, an unknown girl is hennaing my hand. She describes predictively the atmosphere of bazaar, which is a traditional and typical shop, decorated with neons. Also, Moniza is participating in a well-known, and it continues. Okay, slight misunderstandings aside, let's start this by saying, the writer presents her experience with the unknown girl as what? As a memorable interaction? As a sensory interaction? This point is saying something like that, and either of those would work, and then the same evidence will follow, but it would be a much better answer. Let's continue. Here's another one. You can pause and read this for yourself if you like. You can guess the tweak I'm going to make if you want to. Alvi feels integrated to the Indian culture as she wanted to have the henna tattoo. Okay, it could easily be, The writer presents her experience with the unknown girl as having integrated her with the Indian culture. Or, the writer presents her experience with the unknown girl as one of integration with the culture of India. And those key words are already in this paragraph. I've just dropped them into a standard format. And don't worry that it's repetitive. There are no marks for your use of English in this question, or in any of the reading paper. You can't impress the examiner with a turn of phrase, only with the clarity of your thoughts. Again, you can pause and read. This is a good answer. It's quite similar. In place of integration, we have connection. So, our rephrasing will be very similar. The writer presents her experience with the unknown girl as connecting her with the Indian culture through the use of henna. Or, the writer presents her experience with the unknown girl as important as the henna connects her with the culture of India. Now, these are pretty clear points. They're easy to evidence and explain. And if you can make 5 points like these with those evidence and explanations, you'll get a really high mark for this question. We're getting into the better responses now, and in many ways, the more frustrating ones. The writer repeats the phrase an unknown girl many times, which tells us how important the hennaing is for her. Now that's a point, but it's not explained or analysed in any kind of a way. I've put paragraph marks there to show you that the next point is unrelated. Please remember, always separate your points into paragraphs and leave a blank line. Again, a virtually identical answer with the same mistake. The first point isn't explained. The second point then, let's move to that. The vivid imagery created by the writer, like wet brown line from a nozzle and satin peach knee, tells us the meaning and importance this has for her as she is describing it in as detailed as possible for the reader to experience it along with her. I like that. It's a little clunky, but let's rewrite that. The writer presents the experience with the girl in such a way as to allow the reader to experience it, for example, by the use of vivid imagery. Now that works. It's not the best point in the world. You could make that about many different texts, but it would be extraordinarily easy to evidence and explain, including the examples and the evidence given here. So this student has some really good ideas tucked away, like the previous ones, but need to clarify those points that they're going to make before they start writing. Now this is a very clear point, a clear topic sentence. We don't need to repeat the writer presents her appearance each time, as long as we could. Pause and read it. This is a model paragraph for evidencing and explaining too. I often say that you should imagine the examiner as a toddler asking, why, all the time. Well, this answer goes into those whys. And here's another really good one. Again, pause it, read it. You'll learn by seeing good examples. This could go into more detail, and this is the kind of paragraph that you would definitely want to explain further if you only have 3 key points to start with. Pause it again now and see if you can find where the extra line of explanation could be added. It's after the full stops, of course. Whenever you come to a full stop, read the previous line and ask yourself if it is fully explained before continuing to a subsequent point. Okay, same thing again. As I've highlighted here, this student could explain how using cultural language makes the trip cozy. I mean, it does, yes, it's a really good point. But this student hasn't explained how it does. And again, a really good answer that could be even better. This point mentions shame in the second line. If I read it, Even though she might start confidently, later her experience is brought down by a bit of shame. Does it go on to explain how she feels shame? Kind of. It says that she feels watched, yes, and perhaps uncomfortable, as nobody likes being stared at, but that doesn't generate shame in itself unless you feel you're doing something wrong. This student appears to actually realise this and ends with a point that the writer feels uncomfortable and anxious. The shame is kind of dropped. Now, if you find yourself doing that, go back and change the topic sentence. Remember, the explanation or analysis need to show how the evidence supports the point you made. If your explanation fits a different point, then make that point instead. Now, much the same thing again. Some really good points. But this student, and I've highlighted them in white there for you, this student goes through mysterious and interesting to anonymous and representing and spreading culture to another normal person. That one right on the right, is not wealthy, is entirely possible that that won't be seen by the examiner at all. If you write outside the lines, it doesn't always scan. Now, how do these link together? Well, they don't really. Normal people are interesting, but not especially so, and they're not particularly mysterious. Is anonymous interesting? Probably not. Is representing and spreading culture mysterious? Probably not. So again, clarify the ideas. This one potentially is 3 or 4 different paragraphs. Now, this is the last one we're going to look at. This paragraph and the following slides show how the whole answer can be constructed and how this approach efficiently ticks all the right boxes for the examiners. This is an introduction to all the points. I'll read it. The writer presents her experience with the girl in An Unknown Girl as very lively, colourful and foreign. But at the same time, it is used as a metaphor to describe the writer's lack of identity and internal fights to find herself. I like that. Okay. This is an introduction to all the points, as I've said, and I've highlighted those points in the coloured boxes. We can see immediately underneath that the first paragraph starts with lively and filled with colour. That's the yellow matching the yellow. The next 3 paragraphs have the same pattern. The writer presents this experience as foreign. Okay. Moniza also describes her experience as a metaphor. Lastly, Moniza presents this experience as a process in finding her identity. Yeah. This student has planned their entire answer before starting. They know what they're going to say. They've got those points and they know each point's going to be a paragraph. And so here is the conclusion. In conclusion, Alvy presents her experience with the girl both as a real and a beautiful experience and as a metaphor for what she felt inside of her as she was meeting her birthplace. Slight misunderstanding there, but let's ignore that. Now, notice that only the most insightful point is mentioned, the one that is most likely to show the examiner that this is a perceptive answer and hit the top band, that the whole thing is a metaphor. Now, you don't actually need an introduction nor a conclusion, but if it helps you structure your own thoughts, then it's definitely worth it. It is certainly a good idea to know those points before you start writing your first paragraph. And if it helps write them out in an introduction, then do that. As for the language, again, don't be afraid of being repetitive. Find a phrase that works for you and use it. Underneath, you can see all the ones that I used here. The writer presents her experience with the girl in An Unknown Girl as, that was the introduction. The writer presents her experience with the girl as, paragraph 1. The writer also presents his experience as paragraph 2. Moniza also describes her experience as paragraph 3. Lastly, Moniza presents his experience as, in conclusion, Moniza presents her experiences with the girl as and as. It's perfect. It's absolutely showing the examiner that you know what you're doing. So there you have it. A really simple way to approach paper 2 question 1 to get those top marks. Now you can very, very easily practice finding 5 points about a text. Go through the anthology or the past papers and simply bullet point them. 5 things that you could write about before writing at all. And in your practice sessions, you don't even need to write them up. Just find the points. In other practice sessions, you could practice working on those individual paragraphs just one at a time. Find that pattern that is going to work for you, that helps you fully explain yourself in an efficient way so that you don't have to reinvent each time. Whether that's PE, PEA, petal, pretzel, doesn't matter. You could start all this by going back and rewriting some of the attempts we saw earlier in this video. Or you could go back through your notes and rewrite your own previous attempts. Remember, excelling or achieving excellence isn't a matter of being naturally incredible, nor concentrating really hard and giving it your best in one attempt. Excellence is achieved after a process of work and incremental improvement. So let's improve paper 2 question 1 and get those really high marks.